Looks like the villains have some superpowers of their own. Let's hope the girls can stop these superpowered no-gooders as we start today's Powerpuff review, Chemical X-Traction for the Nintendo 64 and Sony PlayStation. It was developed by VIS Entertainment and published by BAM Entertainment in 2001, with the N64 port released at first, and then the PS port released a month afterwards. Of course, we'll be taking a look at both ports for this review, starting with the Nintendo 64 version. Upon starting the game, you'll be greeted with some logos and then the main menu. From here, you can select Story Mode, Simulator Mode, and configure options. Simulator Mode will allow you to jump right into the battle, with what characters you desire to play as, and who to face up against. However, if you're looking for a battle between the Powerpuffs, then this is not your game. But for the basis of this review, we'll be taking a look at the story mode of the game. The plot here is that the Powerpuff Girls were making their perfect pie with sugar, spice, and everything nice. But it turns out that Bubbles thinks that it's missing one ingredient, Chemical X. Not too surprising. However, little do they know that Mojo Jojo is spying on them. Intrigued by their perfect pie, he decides that it is his for the taking. Knowing that their pie was stolen, the Powerpuff Girls then give chase to retrieve their perfect pie. However, it was all too late. Now all the villains are chock full of Chemical X, granting them superpowers of their own. And now it's up to the Powerpuff Girls to stop these villains once and for all. After seeing the backstory, you're then greeted with the character selection screen, where you'll select which Powerpuff to play as. Of course, in order to get a full 100%, you'll have to complete the game with all three girls. At the bottom of the screen, you also see a password system, which indicates your current saved progress. Once you've selected your girl, you have a choice of what stages to play on. Though in story mode, the very first stage is the one you'll be starting on. Once everything's set, you're then dropped right into the game, ready for battle. So here's the deal. It's a 3D one-on-one fighter where the goal is to knock down your opponent before he does the same to you. Simple as that. However, you'll notice that there are a few things that are wrong with this game, starting with the gameplay itself. First-time players will have a hard time on what to do, as your opponent will figure out a way to hit you within a matter of seconds. So the only way to get the advantage on him or her is to repeatedly dash towards your opponent from above. Not very fun. Although regular melee attacks are not impossible to pull off if you can do so, objects to throw, and Chemical X bottles to take advantage of, they are useless enough due to the ability to just spam the aerial dash. Next up is the music. When starting it up at first, you'll be thinking, oh, that's cool, Powerpuff Girls music. But just about a couple of stages in, you'll notice that it's the only track that plays throughout the game. And if that's not it, then the next thing you'll come across is the voice acting. And wow, it is just notorious. Here, just listen. Seriously, could they have made these voices any lamer? Hearing Blossom like that is just absolutely unfaithful and seriously distracts the player from the overall gameplay. The only positive thing I could say about this game are the graphics. To introduce the girls in 3D form, it's actually not that bad and pretty innovative at the time. Though I would prefer the 2D presentation to be better in comparison. So yeah, nothing else to say about this port. It's basically the worst PPG port of the game in the series, and one of my worst I've ever played. Unless if you're morbidly curious to experience it for yourself, don't even bother. And lastly, we have the Sony PlayStation version of Chemical X-Traction. Now for those of you cautious of this one being as bad as the N64 port, rest assured that you'll be seeing some definite improvement. The first thing you'll notice is the presentation. The 3D cutscenes are pretty darn impressive, though they are a bit off compared to the in-game models, and especially compared to the 2D presentation. And it's nothing compared to Relish Rampage. But at its time, it was a pretty unique thing. The character selection screens are a bit more involved now compared to the N64 version, and the music now has a variety of soundtracks for each and every stage in the game. And most importantly, the voice acting is massively improved over the N64 version.
Alright! Time for some fun! I'm gonna kick some bad guy butt! Hey, yippee!
Nothing can stop my clever plot to take over the world!
The only major catch is the gameplay itself. Bits of it are improved, one of them being that spamming the aerial dashes are no longer the main necessity, but then comes a bit of a difficulty spike. First-time players are going to have a hard time getting used to the game's quirks, so your main method into hitting your opponent is by relying on throwable objects in the arena. Basically what you do is you pick up an object, charge up, and then throw the object at your opponent for some damage. If you charge it up well enough, you'll have a chance at knocking your opponent down, buying you a small fraction of time. It is recommended that you charge your throw immediately after you pick it up and to execute your throw the instant your opponent prepares for his attack. Otherwise, chances are you won't survive that long. Though if you have the opportunity, you can actually kick an object towards your opponent, saving you some time from picking up one and charging. While it is recommended to rely on objects, melee attacks are still not impossible to pull off, provided that you can time them right. Though if your opponent is down to his or her last bits of health, and are close enough to do so, then either a well-timed punch or kick, or even an aerial dash, is an ideal method. It's also possible to get 3 full Chemical X bottles should a chance arise, thus enabling you to use your special move on your opponent. Of course, if your opponent does get all 3 bottles, then you'll have to successfully hit your opponent immediately with objects before he performs his special move, because chances are the results can be disastrous. But in any case, if you happen to get all 3 bottles yourself and have an open opportunity to perform a special move, do so. To put it simple, it's hard as nails at first, but after a while of gameplay you'll get used to it. Though once you've come up with a strategy, it actually makes the game a little too easy. Then it gets hard again, at least when you progress further in story mode, as the difficulty increases a bit after every battle. In any case, if you find some portions of the game to be a little too easy for you, then I suggest choosing a higher difficulty at the moment. The last things I want to touch on are the unlockables and save games. As you progress further into story mode, you'll be able to unlock a few new stages and eventually some new characters. As mentioned before, the story mode can be a bit tricky to get past, but once you get through it, you'll be able to have every stage and character unlocked. So there is a bit of gameplay here. And as for save games, passwords are no longer required to restore your previous progress, as the save data is now stored on your memory card, removing the hassle of memorizing and writing down the specific icons that are necessary to load your previous save. And yes, these are indeed icons that you use instead of numbers and letters. And that's Chemical X-Traction. The PS port is a definite improvement over the N64 version, partially aside from the gameplay. The AI can be a bit brutal at first, but manageable at best and for the least once you get used to it. In any case though, you will get a lot more fun playing this with a friend. Otherwise, it's not a bad game. If you're an avid PPG fan looking for a themed fighting game and have a friend willing to play it, and or if you don't mind being a bit of a masochist, then I'd skip the N64 port entirely and give the PS port of Chemical X-Traction a look.
Easy as pie.
Now we know why you're the leader, Blossom.
I think we're done here. Yay! So, girls, you want to go make another pie? No way!
Well, that was easy as pie. And so, once again, the day is saved, thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
Want more Powerpuff stuff to brighten your day? Of course you do. Check out these videos by clicking on them, or subscribe to the hotline to be notified when to save the day. And tune in next week for the next Powerpuff game right here on DG Game Reviews. Thanks for watching.